Books are a uniquely magical doorway beyond the things we know. Not only do they tell us that dragons exist, but they can be beaten and overcome. In today's charged atmosphere, books show us we're not alone. They help us understand our heartbreaks and joys. They connect us to others who feel and have felt the same. Books and reading allow us to live 1,000 lives, sending us soaring into the world outside of ourselves, not to escape, but to survive. For it is often said that the greatest secrets seem to be found in the most unlikely places. Welcome to the podcast, Books Are Magical.
Hello, thank you for listening to Books Are Magical. I'm Hannah. Today I am joined by my co-host Rachel, as well as a very special guest. We are beyond thrilled and honored to have author Ciera Burch with us today. Ciera is the author of Something Kindred, a new young adult novel that is coming out on April 2nd. And Rachel and I loved it. I thought it was really special. And we're so excited to talk about it with Ciera today and learn all the behind the scenes info about the book. But before we jump into all of our questions, I would love to get to know you, Ciera, more and hear about the book from your perspective.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. I'm Ciera. I'm a kids lit writer. I write middle grade and young adult. I'm also a former bookseller and a former assistant editor. So I've been doing a lot of jobs within publishing. And so Something Kindred is my YA debut. And it started out as my grad school thesis. So I worked on it for quite a while. And it's about essentially a 17-year-old girl who has to move temporarily to rural Maryland to help take care of her dying estranged grandmother. And while she's there, she starts to uncover a bunch of family secrets. And she also meets a girl, Kat, who's very interested in the ghosts that sort of haunt the town. Although Jerica, the main character, does have a boyfriend to begin with. And that's all I'll go into it.
Well, I loved this book, and it's kind of interesting because part of the I guess the description was it was like Southern Gothic, and I was like Southern, and I was like Maryland, is Maryland Southern? I don't know. I'm born and raised in Louisiana, currently living in Alabama. Hannah's over in Georgia, so when we say South, we're like deep South. We're like. Right. You were above the Mason-Dixon line. I don't know. No, but this book really hit a lot of those really important family moments and those really important kind of memories of letting go and also kind of holding on. But you said you found inspiration to work on this book, like based on your thesis. And so what was your thesis about? Was it this book?
Yeah. It was this book. So it was the first 100 pages of a different draft of this book. But I originally conceptualized it as my thesis. I was like, I'll just, get the first 100 pages down and then who knows what I'll do with it from there. But it was inspired I started grad school in 2017. And that's the same year that my grandmother died. And it was a very quick, she got diagnosed with cancer like the 4th of July. And by like the end of August, she was gone. So it was very quick and very fascinating experience because it was sort of the first close family death that I'd had as an adult. And so I think just writing or starting to write what became Something Kindred was just sort of like a way for me to like process my grief. And I was also like, in a completely different state and city. And so having it as like a thing that I needed to do because it was my thesis was really helpful. And it also felt a little bit like a tribute to my grandmother as I wrote it.
I love that. That is really beautiful. I mean, this book is all about history and family and remembering things, even if they're not happy things. And that's so special that this kind of like served the same purpose for you as the author. And the fact that it was your thesis is really cool too. So
it wasn't that good, I will say.
Well, I feel really lucky that we got to read it. That's awesome.
Well, thank you.
I mean, like you said, this book deals a lot with death, kind of the process of dying, grief, and then it also has these eerie spirits called echoes in the book, which I mean, basically ghosts, but I thought it was really cool that you called them echoes and not ghosts because I feel like ghost has such a certain connotation to it. And I personally don't do scary stuff. Like, I don't watch scary movies. I don't read scary books. So when I saw this pop up, I was like, oh, please don't let me be terrified. I don't want to have nightmares. And I didn't. It was like the perfect blend
Good.
of like eerie and real and sad. And I was just really curious, how did you balance that? Was it always your intention to have it be not so scary, or did you have to kind of tame it back a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll say I'm also I'm not a big fan of scary things myself. I'm pretty easily scared. And since I live alone, if I like watch a horror movie or something, I'm like, "Oh god, something's going to come and get me." And so yeah, I didn't want it to be scary. I wanted it to be sort of realistic in a way, which is part of why I named them echoes, and that I think, believe in ghosts and in things that or maybe aren't on our same plane or dimension, or just like an imprint on something or someone. So in this case, the echoes are sort of imprinted on the land, on the town of Coldwater, because of what happened there. And so they're echoes, for a reason, because they're echoing back sort of like the past at you in the present. But I didn't want it to be scary. I did want it to be unsettling. I went into it knowing that, okay, I didn't want Jerica to just be like, oh, a ghost. I wanted there to be some emotion behind it besides fear. Balancing it was tricky because, of course, you're going to be afraid of this sort of entity of a sometimes wailing person that might come out of nowhere. But I wanted it to be sort of just like if you'd maybe seen a person on the street who was crying. There's not like fear there. There's just questioning and uncertainty and a little bit of sympathy. And of course, if you get close enough with these echoes, it can it can ramp up how you're feeling. But yeah, I think finding the balance was difficult in a way. It all sort of blends together in the writing, But I just sort of tried to think of how I would feel initially, and then I pushed away my own like feelings and was like, okay, well, how would Jerica feel about this? And since it's from her point of view, I wanted to show that yeah, she was a little bit afraid, but there was a lot of unsettling emotions there, and also at the forefront, just emotion in general, which sort of trumped any fear.
Now, you consider this YA fiction, which I love because I feel like it's a really great book for the YA generation to be able to pick up and kind of maybe process grief a little bit better, kind of knowing that other people can commiserate with what they're going through and processing feelings. But I also feel like, even from an adult standpoint, that this is great for. I too lost my grandfather actually in 2020. My first family member my first close individual to me, very quick. I was in LA at the time. I was not in Louisiana, but at the other LA. And so I was hundreds of miles away, and then I had to try to process that from that far. So there were a lot of points in this book with that kind of grief that really, really struck a good chord with me, of knowing how Jerica processed it and how she kind of worked through it by the ties she had. And I really liked that. So kind of wanted to give kudos to that, because I think it does elevate the YA genre a little bit by kind of saying, hey, you know what? It may be kind of in this realm, but honestly, it can hit even, older people as well if they've been through something similar, the loss of a loved one and such.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I think grief is definitely a universal experience, no matter how old you are, and I would imagine that most people can relate to it. And I'm a big death friendly sounds it's a little strange, but I think after my grandmother died, I became really big into like death as an inevitability and not being afraid of it. I think I definitely got on my family's nerves for a couple of years with how deeply I dove into like the death positive movement. But I think it's important. I think, there's like the green industry in the funeral industry, like with green burials and natural burials, and like even human composting. So I've been getting into really all of those different things, and just like how different cultures process grief, and even how different generations process grief. Because when I was, when I talked to my grandfather about these types of things, He's not really interested. He's like, no, I just want to be buried normally with a headstone and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but like the environment. And so I think it's important that everyone can relate in some sort of way, because we all know
Hmm.
loss, whether it's loss
Hmm.
through death or any other way. It's a huge part of the human experience, and I wanted to get that across in a way that was relatable to people of any age, because this is also an intergenerational story, and there are different people of different ages in the book also dealing with grief.
Hmm. It's true. I would like to be a tree. I've already told my family that I want to be one of those people who gets put into a tree pod.
Yeah.
So fully support the green movement on that respect. I want to be a tree so one day I can be a book. So that's my goal.
Oh, yeah. That's
I
great.
love that.
Hopefully you're a good book.
I hope so too. I don't want to be an encyclopedia or something.
That's so, I honestly have not really thought about what I want to do, but my husband has. There's this book that he read that talks about all the different death rituals of all different cultures, and he loves the morbid stuff. So he was really into it, and he in the back of the book it has a form where you can fill out your death plan. And he was like, "Hey, let's figure this out." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not emotionally ready for that." And he's already telling me, like, I want to be lit on fire. I want to have a funeral pyre out in the woods. Take me to this particular forest. And I'm like, I can't even think about that. I'm trying to figure out what I'm having for lunch. And his culture was much more accepting of death than I think I grew up with. And I think this book actually helped me a little bit too. I love the concept of the echoes. I loved how photography kind of helped Jerica connect not only with the people around her, but holding memories. And for me, I'm like, okay, I've got to do better about taking pictures, because that is a really beautiful way to just celebrate life and kind of, feel like there's something tangible that keeps going. I was curious, because photography plays such a huge role in the book. Is photography something that you're personally into? Did it just fall into place with the story, or how does that tie to you?
Yeah, no. So it's definitely something I'm into, and not seriously. I don't want anyone to think I'm like a super great photographer, but it's something that has always connected my grandma and my mom and me, and that we have always been like big picture takers. And we're also, or at least me and my mom, we're really bad at like getting in front of the camera so that we're part of the memories as well. My grandma was a big picture taker in the family, and then my mom, and now it's me. And I just think there's such great ways to capture memories. And like, of course you have your phone, but for my 26th birthday a couple years ago, my mom actually gave me my grandma's old Polaroid camera, and it's like this giant bulky thing, but I try to take it. Yeah, and it's so loud and the flash is huge. But it's great because then you like get to physically have those photos, and they're not like the new Polaroids where it's like just a small little rectangle. It's like this huge thing. But I was able to find like a photo album to actually keep them in, and it's been really lovely to have. And like with younger family members who have no idea what a Polaroid is, when I like take a picture and it prints out, they're like, "Excuse me," and so I give it to them to like to wave around, which you actually shouldn't do. You're supposed to just let it sit and develop, but it still develops fine. And yeah, so it was always this thing that connected me, my mom, and my grandmother. And I thought if I was going to be writing about a mother and a grandmother and a daughter, that I wanted to sort of incorporate something that was familiar to me. And also because with Jerica, when she moves around a lot, she takes a picture of sort of everywhere that she's lived, and it serves as like a memory. And I personally have a terrible memory. So I'm always grateful for things that will like jumpstart my memory. And pictures tend to do that for me the most. And since this is a podcast, I won't show you the picture that I have over here, because that would be kind of rude to the people. But this is like a picture of my grandma and her when she was younger. And so I keep it like right on my desk. And I just love pictures, and old pictures especially, where they don't just, I feel like all the color pictures of today don't quite have the same, I don't know, je ne sais quoi of like the sepia or like the black and white, which are so fun to me.
Yeah, there is something soulful about those. I have a picture of my grandmother next to my reading chair in my living room. It's just a small picture. It's not no more than about maybe 2 or 3 inches, but it's one of the few that I have of her, and she looks so pretty in it, and I just like keep it there. So fully support having some family close by.
Yeah, I have like my mom back there.
That's awesome. I was going to ask, so there is really this, like, there's a very big theme of kind of going home or even finding a home in this particular book. And it feels as though, they're very transitory. They're constantly moving, or at least Jerica and her mom, they feel like they're kind of moving around constantly. And so Jerica, even though she's never been to Coldwater, when she gets there, like the book says, feels like home to her. And I just kind of, wanted to talk a little bit about that kind of going home theme. What kind of inspired finding that place?
Yeah, so there's so much that inspired it, but I think one of the things at the forefront was actually a text from a friend. And so I live in DC, but the rest of my family lives in New Jersey, where I'm originally from. And so I text her randomly. I think I said something like, "Oh, I'm home." And she said, well, which home? You're always home wherever you're at. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that." And so it started sort of with that, but also the idea of sort of ancestral home, like ancestral land. So like the town of Coldwater is based on my grandfather's hometown, which I won't say the name, but it's in the eastern shore of Maryland, which is actually below the Mason-Dixon line, like where it is. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And like if you ever meet my grandparents, they have like the weirdly thickest like Southern accent. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, you guys are from Maryland. What's happening? um, and so my grandparents still have the house there, and that's the house where my pop-up grew up. It was like his grandparents' home or something that the story is they secreted it through the woods during like the 40s of times of sharecropping, and they like moved away secretly and put it on this plot of land. And so we still have that in the family and we still visit. But for my entire childhood, every time we would go, I was like, "Oh, this is so boring. This is in the middle of nowhere. I don't have any cell phone service." And it was never somewhere that I wanted to be. But when I grew up and I went there for something with my grandparents, and I realized like, "Oh, hey, like this feels comfortable. Like this is a nice place to be. And it feels like I can feel the rest of my family here. And like my pop-up is more comfortable there, I think, even though he's lived in New Jersey for like over 50 years. And so it was just something that thought about where it was like, okay, you might not be from here and this is like not like your place, but there is something comforting like in the air or the soil or the dirt, or even just like spiritually, that I thought was really comforting or can be comforting, where it's like even if you don't have a place anywhere else because you're moving all the time, there can be a place for you, whether that's just like where your family's from or where your family lives. And that includes like found family as well as biological family.
I love that. I really love that. That's very heartwarming. I kind of feel the same way about going to visit my dad's side of the family who live in Louisiana in a very in just kind of a field in north central Louisiana. And so it's not my home. I never I did live in northeast Louisiana, but not there. But going home, you can feel those roots. They do run deep.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is so strange because it's like I've not lived in Maryland in my whole life, but it feels like I do.
Yeah.
So since Coldwater is obviously not a real town, was there a certain significance to the name Coldwater? It kind of stuck out to me. There were a couple names in the book actually that stuck out to me. I was like, I don't know. Some people choose them like they just came to them. Some people think long and hard. I was just super curious what that was like for you.
Well, I had a whole list of town names because it turned out it's kind of hard naming a town that's not real and also not naming it after a town that already exists. And so I looked at a lot of different naming conventions and was like, okay, if I was going to settle a town in like the 1860s or whatever, what would I look around for like landmarks or things? And so there's a river nearby that comes into play into the book, and it has a different name. It's not called Coldwater, but I was like, oh, this is a river. It has water. The water is cold. and that's just about how I named it. I had like a whole list of them, and I was like, this one sounds better on the tongue, and I like it. So that's all. There's no special significance besides it being near a river, honestly.
No, I mean, the fact that you still did research into it, I think is still cool. What about Jerica's name? Was there any research or thought for that one?
No, not even not even that one. My mom and my stepdad were watching a show. I don't remember what show it was. It's a show on Showtime. And I was like only half listening because I was trying to write or like trying to do research. And one of the people's names was Jerica. And I was like, Jerica, I like that name. It like sounds old, but like not too old. And I was like, oh, well, that's that's her name. And I had other names, but that one I kept returning to. And that's what she wanted to be called. So I was like, okay, fine. You can call you that.
No, it's cool. I mean, I'd never heard it before. So that's why I was like, huh. I want to know where this came from. Even if it was just a passing reference, it's still cool to me.
It's a Showtime show.
Not to give too many spoilers away, because I don't want to give like spoilers and stuff away, but so we do encounter Jerica as being bisexual. So of course there's Kat on one side and there's James on the other. And I really like, and I'm just going to say, I really like that you brought him into the scene instead of leaving him on the other end of the phone during certain important parts of it. I really like that we didn't have to just talk to him like via a phone call or a text, that we actually brought him into the scene and made him kind of more real as a person like that they actually had to face in the story. So I thought that was a really important part because sometimes we do avoid those hard conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't want Jerica to be able to avoid it. I was like, no, you have to face it head on. If this is your choice and this is what you want to do, then you have to face it. Especially because I really liked James as a character. Like when I was writing him, I was like, this is not a bad guy. Like if you put it on paper, like she has no reason to like, prefer one person over the other, really.
Mm-hmm.
But listening to your heart isn't very logical. So I didn't want to make him like an antagonist or anything because he's a perfectly great boyfriend and guy. And I really loved him as a character, honestly.
I did too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I felt bad for him, but I thought he was also very emotionally mature for being a teenager and how he handled how things panned out. First, I mean, Jerica definitely had growing to do for sure throughout the entire book. I really loved watching her growth. I don't read a lot of YA. I used to read a lot of it, but sometimes you feel like they kind of stick in that teenage mindset and you could just like see her growing up throughout the course of the book. I want to give you kudos for that because I felt like I was right there with her, right back in my, like high school self. And I thought that was really, really well done. I know Rachel mentioned that anyone could enjoy this, even, though it's for YA. And I totally believe that. I think that this could be classified as more just because of how much emotional depth and character growth there is. It's just a really, really emotionally mature book. So again, kudos to you on that.
Thank you. I had to drag her kicking and screaming through a lot of it, but isn't that teenagehood? Anyway.
Yeah.
I think I still do that. I still kick and scream if I have to go through hard stuff.
Me too. Still complain to my mom.
Absolutely. So there's different special places for various characters of like where they're drawn to or where they find sense of peace or release. And I was wondering if in your real life you have a place that you can kind of do that.
Oh, that's a good question. I live in a city, so it's always, I feel like, a little bit harder to find areas of peace. But earlier today, I was at Rock Creek Park, and so I would say anywhere being near water is always very nice and special to me. And my mom and stepdad recently bought a house, and it's sort of near like this river, like it's right like next to their house. I've only been able to get over there a couple of times, but I think where you sit on the deck in the backyard, you can hear the water, and I think that's been really, really special. And I think in the years to come, it'll be a really nice place of peace, not just because my mom's there and I love my mom, but also for the water. I'm a big water girl. So, yeah.
I would say, even though I live in northern Alabama right now, and like literally near the top in Huntsville, so I'm like, I don't know, I'm like an hour from Nashville, but I'm also like an hour from Birmingham. So,
Oh,
um,
okay.
my favorite place is Destin. Destin in Florida is like
Mhm.
it's the whitest beaches and the bluest water, and it's so peaceful, especially if you hit it on off season. The wind
Mm.
just blows, and it is so relaxing. So that would be my place if I was to have one. What about you, Hannah?
Oh my gosh, my brain just completely blanked. Does it count if I say I use a sound machine that sounds like water when I go to sleep to turn off my brain? Like, not necessarily a
That
happy
counts.
place, but like
It's like a happy place in your
definitely,
brain.
yeah, there's something about the sound of water that's just like immediately turns off everything else. I'm like, I have never really been a big beach girl, but maybe I need to find a lake or something because this is working real well for me.
Yeah, it's great. I like to say it's probably because I'm a Jersey girl, so like the ocean, but I didn't
Oh
grow
yeah,
up that close to the water, so who knows?
water is close enough in spirit; it counts.
Yeah.
The last question I had about the book, I feel I'm going back to names again, is actually the title of the book, Something Kindred. I I really liked that title. I felt like it was really when I caught it, it immediately caught my attention. And then after I read the book, I was like, you have a moment where like this was the perfect title for the book. I had that moment. And I'm just curious, did you have a working title or was this always the title for the book?
No, yeah, I definitely had a totally different title at first. Like when I first queried my agent and when we took it, when I eventually got sold, it was originally called The Inevitability of Home. But my publisher was like, inevitability is like too hard of a word for people to like say or type or find. And I was like, okay, but I love this title. And they were like, we'll find something else. And I was like, fine. I'm really bad at titling. Besides that original title, that was all I had. I was like, listen, I can't do this again. I'm bad at titling. And so my editor, Grace, for this book, she's great. And I guess she like scoured through the manuscript. And so she was like, what about Something Kindred? And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And also, Kindred by Octavia Butler is one of my favorite books. And I was like,
Yes.
okay, well, if we can be connected in this way, that's cool. And then when I was rereading it, like my past pages, I actually wrote like the line that includes Something Kindred in it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know I wrote that. I thought you just came up with it. But yeah, I didn't choose it, but I wrote it. So like kind of, but it's my editor who has all the praise for it. And it really is a great title that I came to absolutely love, even more than my original title.
I was actually thinking that it reminded me of Kindred because I'm actually reading that, actually audiobooking that right now for a physical in real life book club, and I'm loving it. And I still
So
also
good.
see that whole ancestral home and those sorts of connections as well, with a little bit of like that paranormal, supernatural tones. So honestly, yeah, that is a great book to kind of have a callback to. Good call on your editor.
I know. I was like, oh, that's great. I don't want to compare myself to Octavia Butler because that's like impossible. But if we can have this little connection, that's great.
Definitely have a connection there. And how about I'll be like, you know what? I'll put it over there. I'll put it on the shelf next to it. I'll be like, there you go, right there.
Oh, thank you.
So I had a funny question, fun/funny
Yeah,
question,
I love funny questions.
based on your bio of being an ice cream aficionado. What is your favorite ice cream or way to have ice cream?
Oh, my favorite ice cream is mint chocolate chip. And that's probably because it used to be my mom's favorite ice cream. And so, like, whenever we would have it at the house, that would be what it was. And I eventually fell in love with it. And, like, my favorite way to have ice cream. Oh, that's a fun question. I've never gotten that one before. I'll say I don't like cones, honestly. I think they make a mess. I don't want to chew them and, like, chew ice cream. It just makes my teeth hurt. So I'll say, like, in a cup and, like, probably at the beach because it's already hot, you need something cool. And I'm not a big fan of summer at all. So anything to cool me down is the best way to have ice cream. But I'll eat ice cream like in the middle of a blizzard too. It doesn't matter. What are your guys' favorite ice creams? Now I need to know.
So I have currently been in a huge kick for chocolate chip cookie dough lately. So
Mm,
that has been my go-to here lately. I just like, I don't know, can't weirdly get enough of it. I love it.
it's good.
That's
It's a good one.
that's actually my favorite ice cream ever since I was a kid. Chocolate chip cookie
Oh,
dough. I don't know what it is, but it's just like maybe it is that like little nostalgia childhood thing, but you taste it and you're just like, yes, this is like pure happiness in a spoon.
it is. Have you guys had the Ben and Jerry's like chocolate chip cookie dough core?
I have, and I felt like I ate the core out of it first. Just-
I think I did too.
so it's like ice cream around the outside and just a core of cookie dough, Hannah, just to let you know how they do
Oh,
it.
that's
Yeah,
dangerous. Okay, right.
it's
Adding
good.
that to my grocery list for the week. Good to know.
You should. I just had it yesterday, and so it was on the top of mind. And I was like, yes, if you love cookie dough, you should get this.
I remember in the book, though, that Jerica and Kat go get ice cream and they both get mint chocolate chip now that you mention that. So I guess I should have known what your favorite might have been, just kind of sliding that in there subconsciously.
I do love writing ice cream scenes in books. I think I have in the two books that I have so far. I think I have ice cream scenes in both of them. It's just fun. Everyone loves ice cream. Well, almost everyone. And like in Something Kindred, it was especially fun because it was a scene that was added like in a much later draft. But I think turned into a cute one for them that I enjoyed
Mhm.
writing.
I mean, I feel like now you need to write as a story about an ice cream seller or an ice cream shop, something. I mean, clearly it's calling to you.
I know, but then I feel like it would be too on the nose, like this girl
Mm,
that's obsessed with ice cream, just writing a whole book about it. Although, if my agent or any publisher will go for it, I'll happily do it. But that requires a lot of research. So I have to go to every single ice cream shop nearby and try all
yes.
of their flavors.
Yes, and that is tax deductible right there. So, I mean, you can draw that out as long as you need to.
It's my masterpiece. It's going to take me like at least 5 years.
Yeah.
See, I feel like maybe we could do like a murder mystery series, like the cozy murder mysteries, where they're like coffee shop murder
Oh.
mystery, ice cream shop murder mystery, deep freeze, and all this sort of stuff. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I don't want to steal your idea though, so you should definitely write it.
I have way too many ideas in my own brain. If anybody out there needs to borrow that, it's a free one.
And now you got to make a book, like an ice cream flavor for the book, and come out with it. Like partner with Ben and Jerry's. That sounds great.
Ooh, that's perfect marketing opportunity right there.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. I think my last question actually kind of ties into that. I was going to ask if you, because you write middle grades and YA,
hmm
if you could write in a genre that you've never published in before, what would it be?
Oh. That's a good question. Probably historical fiction because I like historical fiction. I really liked it as a kid. I still like it now. But it's just, oh my gosh, shout out to those writers because it seems like it requires so much work. Like all the research, like even you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
make sure the buttons on the clothes are like period accurate. And I think I would go down like, one of those Wikipedia rabbit holes and then never come out.
Yes. I feel you on that.
Yeah, but they're so fun, and people, especially when people like really pay attention to the history, I like get sucked in. I'm like, this is so good. This is 500 pages of, I don't know, 1800s politics, and I'm into it.
There you go. I was actually going to follow that up with what is your favorite genre of literature to read? And not just write, but read.
Oh, right now I would say because it changes all the time, but probably like not like romantasy because I'm not a huge fantasy person, but I recently read Kimberly Lemming's like series, and that's like
Yes.
which I saw that you guys had read too. Which I saw, it's like perfect, like funny and romance and like slight on the fantasy, and it's so fun. I wish there were more books like that where it's just like I'm having a great time.
Yes. I'm so glad that people are like starting to pick this up because I feel like they just hit us out of nowhere and we're like, where can we get more? Why are there not more of these on the
Yeah.
shelves? We need more of this.
Agreed. It's similar to like Legends and Lattes too, right? Where it's like cozy
Yes.
fantasy, where it's like there's stakes, of course, but it's not like the end of everything. I can like enjoy the coziness and not be worried about what's to come on the next page.
Right, right. And then there's so much tongue-in-cheek humor. I actually thought the same thing. I was like, it's Legends and Lattes, but spicy. Which is why how I think Hannah got me to read it.
Yep.
It's a good description for it. And as like a big person who's into D&D recently, it's like, oh, I get to play D&D, but like not play. I just get to enjoy.
That's how Hannah and I met, is through a D&D group. I started a D&D group and her husband joined it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay.
I love that.
Now I have to ask the current character you're playing, what is their race and class? Because we're all nerds here, and that's what we obviously ask each other.
Of course. Well, this is my first ever campaign. We just had our year anniversary, which is super fun. So my character, Ciera, is a half-elf warlock, a great old one warlock. Don't ask me who her patron is, because I have no idea. That's up to my DM. I'm still uncovering. But she's been really fun to play. In D&D, I have bought so many dice. Too many dice.
Yes.
Yeah. Just go to the cons and start just buying random dice sets that you don't need. I do that all the time.
Yeah. I got dice from the Renaissance Fair. I was like, I'm at the Renaissance Fair. Why am I buying D&D dice?
Why not? I mean,
that's a great question.
We can be dice goblins if we want to.
Right. Even though I play virtually, I still got to roll the dice. That's all the fun.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Then it's real chance. You're not relying on computers or AI or anything. If you get a 1, you know that the gods hate you for real.
Yeah, you can't even blame the computer. Like, oh, my computer froze and is actually going to land on a 19. No, it's just a 1.
Well, Hannah, I don't have any additional questions. Do you have any more for Ciera?
No, I mean, I love that we started with the book. We ended with D&D. I mean, feels like we've come full circle. But no, I mean, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. It was such a pleasure to read your book. We're so honored that you were willing to come and talk with us, and we really want our audience to read it. So I definitely will be buying a copy and trying to shove it in the hands of anyone who I know that reads.
And I definitely think that I'm going to be talking it up pretty actively myself. Like, since my book club is already reading Kindred, I think I'm going to recommend this as like a next kind of like, I don't want to say follow up, but just say, hey, if you like this one is a great, it's family, it's drama. There's a little bit of that those kind of spooky vibes, but nothing too hard hitting. So I think it's going to hit my audience, or hit the book club girls right in the right place. And I guess boy, because Lee is also in the book club too. So I shouldn't just say girls. There is a token guy in there as well, so kudos to Lee for holding it down.
I also have a token guy in my book club. But thank you guys so much for your kind words and for talking D&D with me too, which I will talk about at all times. But
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you liked the book.
Yeah, thank you so much for such a fantastic YA debut. I was absolutely blown away, and I can't wait to see what else is coming from you in the future. Do you have anything stirring around in your brain right now that may be working its way to a page soon?
Yes, I'm currently writing a sort of friends to enemies to lovers about these two cross-country runners. So that's what I have been working on. And then another middle grade, which I don't think I'm allowed to talk about. But in the YA space, it's the friends to enemies to lovers.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can get you to come back when those come out, when those start to kind of roll down the pipeline. And we'd love to talk to you again.
It would be great to talk to you guys again. I had a lot of fun.
Well, audience, until next time, may your reading adventures always take you to new horizons.
Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you on the next page.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Books Are Magical. Please connect with us through our email, booksaремagicalpodcast@gmail.com, or through our Instagram direct messages at booksaремagicalpod. And until next time, open doors, turn pages, and connect with the world around you.